We are those guys. Hey, you see these guys doing well? Hey, how about those guys? I'm Alex Hardy. He's Nick Ferguson. No hat for me this time, but that's okay. We are letting it flow because, Nick, I'm just going to kick back. We're previewing every single division in the NFL before the 2025 season kicks off, and we are in your territory. This is the AFC West. Nick Ferguson, man, what is going on, brother?
Well, I thought about wearing somewhat of kind of hat to be symbolic of this moment, but I decided not to wear a Stetson hat and wear my own Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets hat. But this AFC West, man, very interesting, very interesting. And I'm looking to hear what you say about Kansas City. Now, what I'm going to say about Kansas City, you may just feel as though, well, I'm being biased as a former Bronco.
Sure.
And you might be right.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead, my man. You lead us off with the Chiefs.
So when we look at Kansas City, right, I know Patrick Mahomes, you talked about it last time, Travis Kelce getting married. I'm hoping to see more of that. So the more we get, the worse he's going to play, right? And that's going to bode well for everyone in the AFC West. But this was a team last year that had several games that they won by one score or less. And they just found a way to win. It caught up with them in the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't see Kansas City Chiefs being the team that everyone feared years ago. Now, they're still the hunted, don't get me wrong, but it seems as though it's not that far of a distance between them and everyone else.
I'll just tell it like it is, and I can't believe I'm this guy coming from your perspective, your point of view, Mr. Denver Bronco. The Chiefs were bad last year. It was a bad year for Patrick Mahomes in that offense. It was a bad year for a rebuilding defense, and they escaped with a bunch of wins. Look, how many times are you going to block a field goal against your Denver Broncos to snatch a victory from the jaws of defeat? It's not going to happen every time, but the problem is you may have possibly missed their window of when they're going to be down. They rebuilt that offensive line. We talked about Joe Thuney in one of our earlier episodes when we previewed the NFC North. Look, a medically questionable player taken at the end of the first round, Josh Simmons, could be their next left tackle for 10, 15 years. So they were looking to reload this offseason. We also have the news that, look, last year they had to deal with missing Rashee Rice due to injury. Well, this year they're going to miss him again due to what was announced as a 6-game suspension, which I'm assuming he would likely appeal. But without knowing when that suspension was going to take place or how long it would be, honestly, even though they're missing one of their key playmakers on offense and in that short game, it's best to know what they're dealing with in terms of when he's missing those games. And we always know they're playing for the end of the year. But also, it allows them to continue to the development of Xavier Worthy and hopefully trying to find a deep ball because that's what put this Chiefs team on the map years ago. And that was glaringly obvious that they were missing it from their offense last year.
Well, we know Xavier Worthy is a thin type of receiver, but is he fast? And I got to give it to Andy Reid. He does a great job of being creative within his offense. If you lose Tyreek Hill, no sweat. We're going to bring in some other guys, and we're just going to revamp our offense. That's kind of been their saving grace. But the biggest saving grace has been on the opposite side of the ball. Chris Jones and Spagnuolo, right? Those are the guys you want to ring the bell for and say, well, those are the bell of the ball when it comes to Kansas City, even though everyone continues to talk about Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. If your defense doesn't show up, if Chris Jones doesn't show up, and there's going to be a lot of issues. But Kansas City's going to be in a lot of games. Obviously, it's going to be another one of those things where it's going to come down to a last-second kick, and they have one of the better field goal kickers in the National Football League who happens, oh, by the way, to be from Georgia Tech. So those Georgia Tech guys seem to come through. But this is the AFC West that's a little more competitive than it's been in the years past.
So let's talk about that competitiveness. Again, we're going to keep things moving. I was about to get us completely sidetracked because I realized that Spags was in NFL Europe the same time you were, but I'm not going to go there. I swear I'm not going to go there because you are chomping at the bit to talk about the LA Chargers. Let's go there next, Nick.
Yes.
We're talking bolt up, Jim Harbaugh, giving the Heisman stiff arm to any cheating scandal at Michigan because he
What
apparently knew
cheating?
nothing.
What cheating are you speaking of?
The kind of cheating that requires a cover up that's worse than the crime itself. The kind that, gets you onto the field at Central Michigan wearing a Groucho Marx mask and mustache. Anyway, I digress. Look, this team is exciting. They carried themselves well through their run game, setting up Justin Herbert for one of his most efficient passing seasons. Look, Keenan Allen is back. They had
Yeah.
Amarian Hampton into their running game. And Najee Harris as well. The offense seems to be humming as well. The defense needs to take some strides as well. But I think overall, this is a team that is just desperate for not just eyeballs and attention in the AFC West, but in the city of Los Angeles as well.
Well, Coach Harbaugh wanted to bring some of that Michigan love, not the cheating part of it, but the ability to run the ball and control the clock. I mean, you mentioned Najee Harris, who comes over from Pittsburgh. Amarian Hampton, a guy who I thought the Broncos were going to select, but here's a bigger back that can catch the ball out of the backfield. We'll see how durable he is when it comes to the NFL and the number of carries he's going to have. But the idea is, can you shorten the game? Can you lean heavily on your running game, taking the pressure of Justin Herbert, who, I think he's a damn good quarterback.
I think he's excellent.
The weapons around him, and health has been an issue. But having Keenan Allen back, man, think what that's going to do for him. Keenan Allen is not a fast guy, but he runs great routes. He reminds me of Steve Largent. Not a very fast guy, but he knows how to break free and get open.
So last year, the entire offense was carried through a rookie second-round wide receiver in Ladd McConkey. This year, I'm not going to call Keenan Allen the playmaker he used to be, but his addition and Amarian Hampton's, they beefed up with a couple tight ends as well, including Tyler Conklin coming over from the Jets. Just they need more outs. They need more options because when the game rests on Justin Herbert's shoulders, and we did see him, run a lot too, design runs at that.
Yeah.
They just needed more than Ladd McConkey as their sole outlet. But I wouldn't say shocking, but look, a second-round player, you can imply that every team essentially passed on him at least once, right? He doesn't have the look of one of the NFL's best receivers, but he certainly played like it a year ago.
Yeah, he did. And Ladd McConkey, a lot of people slept on it, right?
For sure.
And until you realize, like, whoa, we can't take him for granted. He's not one of these Julian Almadella type.
You turn him into one person, Danny Amendola and Julian Edelman.
I guess so. I might as well call him Julian Amendola Wes Welker, right? Because it's kind of the same player, but he changed the game for the Chargers as far as what they wanted to do, and he was able to stretch the field, and he had that speed. And like some people may look at it as deceptive speed, but he was one of those guys when you look for yards after catch, those yak yards, which are so important to every receiver and every quarterback, he was able to supply. So, it gives the Chargers a chance. It makes them a formidable opponent, but then we got to talk about what could slow them down. And we've talked about it before with other teams. It starts with their defense.
Yeah. We'll move to the defense. I just want to say in passing, missing Rashawn Slater after making him the highest paid left tackle in the league. That's huge. That's going to be critical for them, but you'd like to think the sum of the parts, next man up. It is that defense, though. They bring back Khalil Mack. They make some other moves kind of on the tertiary level where they didn't blow the thing up. They weren't trying to reinvent the wheel here, but they move on from Joey Bosa. They move on from some mainstays that had been kind of regular for them. So I'm curious to see, Nick, how they sort of limit. They never really allowed big plays as much, but teams were able to go up and down the field on them pretty consistently, including the Chiefs and the Broncos. So I'm curious what you think with the re-signing of Khalil Mack, adding some depth in the secondary, kind of what the keys are for this team, other than, let's say, Derwin James staying healthy in the backfield.
Well, health is a big issue for every team, especially in the AFC West, where it's physical and teams can kind of spread you out and kind of speed things up like NASCAR. But I mean, having Derwin James, that helps, and have re-signing Khalil Mack. But will that be enough? Once again, we know that this is not just a division, but a conference where teams love to throw the ball. If you can't get after the quarterback and you can't pressure those running mobile quarterbacks, it's gonna be a long day. And
Yeah.
are we talking about the Chargers being able to sustain multiple shootouts this season? I don't know if they have that enough firepower for that.
So we'll see. They made a bunch of changes on the offensive and defensive lines, and that's, really what wins you football games, or at least gets you off to the best starts for a season. So we'll see. I'm curious with the Chargers. And of course, Nick, you've been waiting for this. I'm so excited because the Las Vegas Raiders have Geno Smith in at quarterback. We'll get to him. We'll get to him. The Las Vegas Raiders have Geno Smith in at quarterback. They had, I wouldn't say it was quite the drama that we've seen from other pass rushers this offseason, but they make Max Crosby the richest defensive end for about a week before TJ Watt got his deal done.
Yeah.
Look, you're in Vegas. Tom Brady has his fingerprints more and more on how this team is structured, and Pete Carroll is back after taking a year away from the National Football League. So the change of quarterback, the change at kind of the what would you describe Tom Brady's role as? I mean, that's a huge part of that team as well, plus the head coach. The biggest change for you, at least as far as the Raiders go compared to last season.
Well, he's not only has ownership stake in the Raiders, everything that Brady's been attached to,
Yes.
it's been, tops. And when you think about his level of influence, I guess you can just call him a consultant, right? That's kind of he's a consultant that's a Hall of Fame guy that has more rings than some NFL teams do. So to have a guy around in a building like that, you got to think that it fires players up. And I can tell you this personally about Pete Carroll because I spent some time doing a coaching internship with the Seattle Seahawks.
Right, right.
He has an exceptional way of motivating guys, getting them to believe in certain things about themselves that they didn't even think possible. So you add TB12 to that, you throw in Geno, who resurrected his career with Pete Carroll and with the Seattle Seahawks, and then you add Ashton Genty to the mix. So
Right.
it's no longer this thing where the Raiders are hoping to be in contention. They're now starting to believe that they can't actually do it. Unfortunately, they happen to be in the AFC West, which is going to make things a little difficult for them.
Look, we talked about the changes on the lines for the Chargers. The same goes for the Raiders as well. I mean, the flashy changes at quarterback and running back, and those are important, but none so more than reworking that offensive line, having players step up. JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, moving off of center to guard. I'm curious to see, they have the Colton Miller holdout at left tackle, and I just, the continuity and some regularity is important for them, and bringing back a familiar name in Amari Cooper is fun and exciting, but there's a lot of work to be done, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but you'd like to think they're headed in the right direction, and they,
You know what?
from the beginning of the year, you would think so.
Well, yeah, listen, I'm not down on the Raiders as everyone in Denver, how they're looking at the Raiders because of the rivalry. This team is going to be competitive. And I tell people all the time, don't sleep on them because having Chip Kelly there and his offensive mind, I mean, that has to account for something, and then a motivation by Pete Carroll, because getting players to believe that they stand a chance, they have a chance in every battle they go into, that's something that every coach can't do. Now, we know that there's coach speak, but then there's Pete Carroll's speech. We've seen him do it at USC. We've seen him do it in Seattle with an overabundance of success. And there was one person that we forgot to mention that he is probably the best young tight end in the league.
Sure.
That's Brock Bowers.
Talk about Brock Bowers for me. The offense was essentially followed through the tight end. We touched on it a little bit with Arizona and Trey McBride, but tell me about, how important it is for a team that is intending to run 12 personnel, because they have Brock Bowers as the focal point of the offense. They move him around. Plus, they have Michael Mayer, who they spent a second-round pick, kind of in the trenches doing some of the dirty work, but available to catch passes as well.
Well, Brock Bowers is a cheat code. He's been a cheat code ever since he was at the University of Georgia. And when you're able to create space and allow that tight end to play between the hashes in front of the safety behind the linebackers, and a guy that understands route running, understands how teams are trying to cover him, it's going to open things up. And oh, by the way, if you decide to double Brock Bowers, I know you were talking about Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is still, he's like a Lad McConkey guy, right?
Yeah.
At this stage in his career, he understands how to get open. He still is a big body type wide receiver, and he can flash his numbers, and Geno can actually find him. And if you double Brock, you leave Amari open, but you also create a favorable box for Ashton Genty. So it's not going to be easy wins for anyone facing off against the Raiders. You're going to leave that game understanding, especially defensively, that you were in a hell of a game.
Yeah, and that defense is under the microscope because we like this offense, but I know it's the preseason. They let up 350 yards of offense to their preseason opponents twice, almost 300 yards to the Cardinal for the preseason finale. I think the best bet for this team is if they end up in 30 to 28 shootouts pretty much every week, maybe even 40-point games if that offense can muster it under Chip Kelly. So, Nick, I'll get out of the way. Denver Broncos.
Hey, don't go anywhere too fast. But yeah, you know what? The Denver Broncos are looking over to turn over a new leaf. They've been vacant from the playoffs for 9 seasons, and they've had to watch Kansas City come in, go to the playoffs, win Super Bowls, Patrick Mahomes win MVP, and no one else in the AFC West has captured that title other than the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Broncos are looking at it like this is now their time. They now have Bowles going into his second year. They've added J.K. Dobbins from the run game and R.J. Harvey, hoping that they can finally, fingers crossed, get that ground game going to take the pressure off of Bo. But the one thing that they have that a lot of teams don't have, and you need to be able to have a balanced attack offensively, a solid offensive line, and you need to have a defense that don't surrender that many points, but also can turn the ball over for you. And right now, under Vance Joseph's tutelage, that's exactly what this defense has become. So much to a point that Sean Payton, the offensive genius that he is said to be, he realized, guess what? I know what side of the bread, which is butter, and that's on the defensive side. So they went out and made so many moves defensively, free agency, drafting guys, that they want to give Vance Joseph as much assistance as he can, because if the defense does well, even duplicate even a portion of what they did last year, Alex, that's going to bode well for Sean Payton and Bo Nix.
Well, look, I think a lot of fans would be comfortable with a balanced approach and strategy. You know, here's some attention areas that we need in the draft or free agency. But I credit George Payton and Sean Payton because, the secondary is a strength, but they just continue to make it a strength, right? Patrick Surtain, the defensive player of the year, well, they just go ahead and they just get Jahdae Barrett in the first round of the draft. They have been stacking the secondary, which allows them to, make up for maybe a defensive line, not invest in a Von Miller type that they used to have, or even an Elmis Dumerville back in the day, where they don't necessarily need an elite pass rusher who now costs $40 million a year because the secondary holds up on its own, that creating pressure can happen a little more naturally without putting so much pressure on one or two guys up front. So the secondary is among the best in the NFL, but they weren't just top 3 against opposing passers. They were great in the run game as well last year. So if everything works correctly and this offense continues to look the way it did the second half of the season, where for fantasy football nerds, that's when Bo Nix stopped running the football or really stopped scrambling because he was working that Sean Payton offense. Look, the Broncos, as an outsider, as someone who doesn't have that bias, they looked like they were a team that was ahead of schedule, that got better on the margins this offseason. So, Nick, let's manage our expectations here, or let's not. Is now the time that they not even overtake Kansas City, but they get themselves back in the postseason? Let's start there.
Yeah, they do. Last year, that Buffalo game left a bad taste in the mouth. The offense, struck first. They had that one explosive touchdown, Detroit Franklin, and after that, it was zilch. And to me, they're still trying to get over it the best way they can. And the best way you do that is knowing as though there's a new season. You have another opportunity to change the hearts and the minds of what we saw. But I'll still go back to the defense. You talked about the secondary, but I'll
Mhm.
talk about Zach Allen, who got a
Yeah.
contract extension, DJ Jones. And even though there's no DeMarcus Ware or no Von Miller, you have Jonathan Cooper. But more importantly, you have Nick Bonito. You have Jonah Ellis. You have Q Robinson, the kid they just drafted out of Alabama. They're hoping that, he can hit a stride and help out defensively from the edge standpoint. So this team is thinking that this may be the year for them. I would love to see that happen. I think that they are still a year away. If things bounce their way like a Kansas City, well, it was for Kansas City last season, you never know. But I'm projecting that for the first time in 9 seasons, the Broncos will have an opportunity. It's up to them to get it done, but they will have an opportunity to beat Kansas City, not once, but twice.
Okay, so stack me the AFC West for this year. Does it start with the Denver Broncos, Nick?
Well, because of Kansas City and what they did last year, I have to put them one
Yep,
A, and
I'm
put the
with you.
Broncos
That's
and put the
Do they have
Broncos.
1A and 1B when they do the NFL standings? Is that how that works, Nick?
No, they don't have that. But you ask me, what did I think? So
Mhm.
I'm giving it a 1A, 1B, and then after that, I'm going to give the Raiders over the Chargers.
Okay, you're fading the Chargers. It's boring for me to do it this way, but I just kind of see it running back as it did a year ago. I'll go Chiefs and Broncos to make the postseason. The Chiefs have the division yet again, and Chargers Raiders. I just think that defense in Vegas is going to be a problem. What's not a problem is spending time with you, Nick. We are continuing to preview the rest of the AFC. Hey, but where's the NFC? We already got those for you. Check them out on the Those Guys YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Alex Hardy. He's Nick Ferguson. We're bringing you the AFC South when we meet again. So, Nick, before we head on out of here, what do you have to say to the people?
Never, ever, ever eat cold French fries.
It's fat. That's fair. Even the steak fries kind of hold up. I can eat a cold breakfast potato. I don't love it, but I can do it.
No, man, it doesn't taste. The start is too starchy.